Alright, let's set the mood just right. I'll start by telling how I came to know about the Rougarou, the origin of the legend, how it was passed down to me, and how it wove itself into the backdrop of my life before I ever came face to face with it. I grew up in southern Louisiana, where the air always carries a weight to it, like the stories you hear on porches after sundown, the kind of air that clings to your skin, thick with heat, mud, and memory. My family lived on the edge of the bayou, just past where the gravel road gives up and turns into dirt, and where the cypress trees lean like old men who know too much. The first time I heard about the Rougarou, I was maybe 8 or 9. My grandmother, Mère Celeste, was the one who told me. She was all bones and stories, with a voice like a wooden rocking chair, soft, creaky, and comforting, but always carrying a warning. "You listen to me, mon padre," she said one night as I sat cross-legged on her porch, a mason jar of sweet tea sweating in my hands. "You go messin' around where you ain't supposed to. The Rougarou gonna come for you. Don't care if you're young or old. He find you." I asked her what it was, of course. Kids always ask. She gave me that look, half amused, half serious, and leaned in closer like the Rougarou might be listening. "He's a man by day, or woman sometimes, but at night, he's something else, something cursed, half man, half wolf. Ain't like the werewolves in your stories. The Rougarou comes from sin, from secrets, from breaking Lenten vows, or messin' with the old magic when you shouldn't. And once you become one, you can't talk about it. Not for 101 days, or you'll stay that way forever." She said it came from old French Catholic folklore, passed down through the Acadians, our ancestors, after they were pushed down to the swamps, a way to keep people in line, keep them from doing bad things, or at least, that's how it started. But over the years, people stopped telling the stories as lessons and started whispering them as warnings. The funny thing is, I never really believed her back then. Thought it was just Memmer trying to scare me straight. But I remembered her voice, clear as a bell, the night I met the Rougarou for myself. All right, let's get into how I came. It was the fall of 2011, and I'd moved back home for a while after a rough patch. Relationship gone sour, job lost, the whole deal. I was staying in the old family house, the one just outside Hostoma, down by Bayou Black. Memmer had passed a few years earlier, but her porch swing was still there, groaning like it remembered everything she'd ever said. That night there was a harvest moon, big and orange, hanging low like it wanted to dip into the bayou. I remember because I was restless, couldn't sleep, so I took my old aluminum boat out onto the water. No motor, just a paddle and a lantern. The air was heavy with that swamp smell, mold, decay, and something deeper. I wasn't far from shore when I started hearing something. At first I thought it was just the usual frogs, cicadas, a gator maybe, but this was Dipsha Trent. It had rhythm to it, steps, heavy ones, crunching through underbrush, snapping twigs that shouldn't break unless something big stepped on them. Now I've been out in those swamps since I was a kid. I know what normal sounds like, and this wasn't it. I stopped paddling and let the boat drift, trying to listen better. That's when I saw it on the bank across from me, in the shadows between two twisted cypresses. It was hunched over, almost like a man on all fours, but not quite. Its back was too long and its arms too thick. I thought maybe it was a bear at first, but we don't have many black bears around those parts anymore, and this thing moved different, slow, deliberate, like it was thinking. Then it stood up, and let me tell you, no bear stands like that. 7 feet, if it was an inch, broad shoulders, tapering to a waist, like a man's. But the head, that's what froze me. It was shaped like a wolf, but not natural. The snout was too long, the eyes too deep set and glowing, like embers in a dying fire, and it stared at me, not like prey, like it knew me. There was a moment, just a breath, where neither of us moved, me in my little boat, hands gripping the paddle like a crucifix, and this thing watching me from the shadows like it had all the time in the world. Then it growled, low and deep, not like a dog or wolf, but something that came from the chest. It vibrated through the water and rattled my ribs. I panicked and shoved the paddle into the bayou, hard. The boat scraped against something underwater, veering a course. I looked back, my lantern swinging wildly, and that's when I saw it drop to all fours again and start moving fast. I don't even remember how I got to the dock. I must have paddled harder than I ever had in my life. The boat slammed into the muddy shore, and I jumped out, nearly twisting my ankle. I didn't look back, not once, just ran through the reeds, up the slope, and into the house, locking the door behind me. The air felt wrong for hours after, like it had followed me, like it had let me go. All right, this next part, it's something I still don't like talking about at night, but I'll tell you exactly how it happened. The real escape, because what I told people back then, that wasn't the whole truth. Here's the full story of how I escaped the Rougarou. After I ran inside and slammed the door, I locked every bolt I could find. The house felt flimsy then, just a shell of rotting wood and glass, standing between me and whatever was out there. I killed the lights, pulled the curtains, and sat on the floor with my back against the door. I locked every bolt I could find. The house felt flimsy then, just a shell of rotting wood and glass, standing between me and whatever was out there. I killed the lights, pulled the curtains, and sat on the floor with my back against the door, trying to breathe through the thudding in my chest. I didn't call anyone. I should have, but who would believe me? It was almost midnight by then. I could hear the swamp again outside, frogs chirping, insects buzzing, all that noise that tells you the world is still spinning. But then it stopped, just like that, dead silence. That's when I knew it hadn't left. I crept toward the front window and pulled the curtain just enough to see. The moon lit up the yard like a dim bulb, and there it was, just standing at the edge of the trees, upright again, still. It didn't move like an animal. It didn't wait like one either. There was something calculated in it, like it wanted me to see it, like it was saying, I could have had you, I still might. And then it did something that turned my blood to ice. It took a step forward. I backed away, tripping over a rug and landing hard. My shoulder hit the floor, but I didn't care. I scrambled to my feet and ran for the hallway, thinking maybe if I could just get to the attic, I could wait it out. But the floor creaked under my weight, and I heard a thump on the porch. One step, then another. It was on the porch. The boards groaned under its weight, like they used to when my dad came home late after fishing. Big boots, heavy step. It walked slowly, pacing along the boards, like it was deciding how to come in. I ducked into the hall closet, heart hammering in my ears, barely breathing, and then the scratching started. Not the door, the window. I'd forgotten the side window was unlocked. I'd cracked it earlier that evening to let the breeze in. God help me. The scratching stopped, followed by a creak, and then I heard the unmistakable sound of the window sliding open. I reached for anything at all, and my hand closed on an old rosary that had been hanging on a nail inside the closet for as long as I could remember. It was Memor. I hadn't thought about it in years, but in that moment I clutched it, like it was the only thing left between me and death. I whispered a prayer, And that's when I heard something snarl, followed by a loud, violent thud, like a body slamming into the wall, and then silence. Long, awful silence. I stayed in that closet until the sky started to pale. When I finally stepped out, the house was untouched. No broken windows, no claw marks, no blood, like it had all been a dream, except for one thing. The floor beneath the side window was wet, covered in muddy footprints, paw-shaped, huge, and something else. A single black claw, I still have it, wrapped in linen, hidden deep in a lockbox under the floorboards. I never showed it to anyone, never will. But here's the thing, I think it wasn't the prayer that saved me. I think it was the rosary itself, because the next day, I drove out to Father Thibodeau's place, the old church up on Bayou Lafourche, and he told me something I'll never forget. Some spirits, he said, can't touch what's protected, not unless you invite them. And ever since that night I've wondered, had I invited it somehow? Maybe by going out into the swamp under a harvest moon, maybe by not believing, maybe by forgetting. I don't think you walk away from something like that and just go back to living your life the same way. You can't. Something in you shifts, quiet at first, like a loose floorboard you keep stepping on. But eventually, it starts echoing loud enough that you can't ignore it anymore. The first thing I noticed was the silence, not just the kind outside, but inside me. I used to fill my head with noise, music, podcasts, the hum of city life. But after that night, I couldn't stand it. I stopped turning on the TV. The only sound I could handle was the wind through the trees and the water moving lazy through the bayou. It was like I was listening for something, or maybe I was afraid I'd hear it again. I stayed in that house for another week, slept during the day, stayed up all night. Every creak made me jump. Every shadow outside made my pulse spike. I kept that rosary around my neck and laid salt across every windowsill. I even taped a small mirror facing outward above the front door, an old bit of hoodoo I picked up from one of Memmer's friends, Miss Lottie. I started asking questions around town, not directly, but enough to get a feel for who else might have seen something. Most folks just laughed it off, said the Rougarou was a bedtime story, a morality tale, nothing more. But then there were the others, the ones who paused when I said the word, who didn't smile, who said, "You've been near the water at night," and then changed the subject. One man, old Boudreau, who ran the bait shop on Highway 8, pulled me aside one afternoon. "You saw it, didn't you?" he said, real low. I didn't answer. He just nodded and said, "I saw mine back in '78. Thought it was a dog at first, till it spoke my name. Then he told me something I'll never forget. If it lets you go, it's not done with you." I left the next day, packed up my truck, drove north until the swamp started to fade from the land, and the air felt lighter again. I told people I needed a change, that the memories of the place were too much. But the truth is, I needed distance. Even now, years later, that night clings to me like cypress moss. I see it sometimes in dreams, standing at the edge of the water, watching, waiting. I still wear the rosary, not out of faith, but out of fear, and I still keep the claw, just to remind myself it was real. You don't escape the Rougarou by running. You escape by remembering, by knowing the line between myth and memory is thinner than most folks want to admit, and by never, ever, inviting it back in. All right, let's close the story. Not with a neat little bow, because some stories don't end that way, but with a reflection, the kind you only come to understand long after the fact, when the fear has settled into something quieter, something heavier. People love to believe they understand the world, that if they can name something, they've got it figured out. Ghosts? Nah. Just drafts and creaky pipes. Monsters? just stories we told to explain the dark before we had streetlights. But that's the thing. There is a dark that doesn't answer to us, and sometimes it still shows up. I don't tell this story to scare people. Not really. I tell it because something out there knows us, watches us, and every so often it steps forward through the veil, through the swamp mist, through the crack in what we call reality, to remind us we're not the top of the food chain, not as safe as we think. The Rougarou was more than a creature. It was a test, a reckoning, a whispered warning that the sins we bury in the mud don't always stay buried. Whether it came from old French folklore, Akkadian curses, or something older still, it found me, and it didn't need a reason. But here's the real truth. I don't think I survived because I was smart. I don't think I survived because I was brave. I think I survived because I believed. In that moment, when everything else failed, logic, strength, common sense, I reached for something older than all of it. Something passed down in whispers and beads, in prayers I barely remembered. And maybe, just maybe, that's all it takes. So if you're ever near the bayou under a harvest moon, and you hear something moving in the dark, don't run, don't speak, and whatever you do, don't look back.